Alright guys, so the GSSR is soon to be upon us over here on the NA side of things, and I want to help you out in getting the most bang for your buck because I'm sure you're spending some Christmas money or some gift cards or whatever have you on this, and I want to make sure that you're spending, your $15 to $20 and you're going to be going after a GSSR that is worth summoning on. Now, we're still out here on the vacation laptop, but that doesn't mean I'm not still here to help you guys out with advice. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you the GSSR banners that I think are the best bang for your buck, the best value ones that have a good smattering of servants and have some strong meta contenders. So even if you do not get the meta servant that you need, you are still walking away with another strong servant. So usual YouTube intro stuff aside, liking the video and subscribing, let's just get into this because I'm excited to talk about it and we're already going to be here for a while. So skipping out on a lot of these banners over here, I think the first one of note to look at is the Lancer ones over here, in particular this one right here, the Lancer AoE offensive one, because if you go for this one, you have a 2 in 5 chance of walking away with either Melusine or Ereshkigal, and they are both now able to do Black Grail farming with Ereshkigal's new buff over on the JP side of things, and with both of them, you kind of get a 2 in 1 servant. You're both going to be getting a Black Grail farming AoE Lancer, but with Ereshkigal, you get a servant that is very strong going into challenge quests, and then with Melusine, you also get a pretty decent single target Arts Lancer, and the consolation prize, if you don't walk away with either one of them, is either Quinrinus, who will be very funny to use with Draco and is a solid servant in his own right, and Britomart, who is also a very solid servant in her own right. Not the craziest AoE quick servant, but she is still strong enough that you will probably use her every now and then. And the only servant over here that I think is kind of a dud is the Oryu and Ryoma, but that is because they have personally let me down quite a few times over on JP, to the point that I kind of just default to using Vitra over them, which I know sounds crazy because Vitra has the smaller battery and everything, but they still do have some team utility. They do have some team buffs they're able to donate to everybody, that even worst case scenario, they're not the worst servant to walk away from, which is why I do think this is quite a solid one, because the high is walking away with Ereshkigal or Melusine, and then the lows is still not all that bad. Now, moving on down, this is probably going to be the one that I think everybody is going to be looking at. This is the Castoria GSSR, and people want me to be like, oh, well, this one's not all that worth it. Let me tell you why you shouldn't do this one, but I'm sorry, this GSSR is actually really strong because it is a 1 in 6 chance to walk away with Castoria. But think about it like this: 1 in 6 to get Castoria, 3 in 6 to get one of the other support casters, those being Scotty, Merlin, and Miss Crane over there. Now, those three can be a little bit contentious at times, but what if I told you that Merlin post buff is someone who is in my Buster comps right now on JP, because I don't have Koyenskaya. When I want to do farming with my Ace the Savior, my Morgan 3, I gotta bring a friend Koyenskaya, I gotta break out my Koyen Dark because of her first and second skill, and then I can use Merlin because that gives me the exact amount of NP I need to be able to complete the farm, and he gives a solid Buster buff because now he gives more crit damage, but also a battery on his second skill. So Merlin is as relevant as ever, and Scotty, a lot of people want to put her down, but she's still really good going into boss fights, giving you massive quick crit damage, the 50% targetable battery, the defense down is good, and her NP is not bad. The problem is getting to her NP, but when you do fire her NP, it is very, very strong. And if you want to do like the most fun things with quick setups and have them loop like over 100% of their NP, you are going to want to have Caster Scotty alongside your Ruler Scotties to just give them massive amounts of refund on their quick cards. Miss Crane is the only awkward one because picking her up, I know some people are going to say like, oh, I'm not big brain enough to use her. Trust me, it's not that hard to use Miss Crane. The hardest thing about her is that team cost is so low right now on FGO that it is hard to make these really broken setups work. I mean, think about Summer Chloe and everything that she enables. We effectively have a 5-star version of her who's honestly worse because her cost is higher. You can more easily fit Summer Chloe into team comps and do the whole switcheroo thing because she's a 4-star, her cost is lower, but Miss Crane is suffering from the fact that we still do not have an increased team cost. So whenever we get that, I'm sure she will skyrocket in popularity. But that is basically a 4 out of 6 chance of walking away with a very strong support, maybe 3.5 if you don't really want to count Miss Crane right now or you don't plan on using her. But even if you don't get them, the DPSs in Ilya and Izumo are very strong. They can do very good damage, especially in the case of Ilya, and they have these massive batteries that if you need them to chunk a large enemy in a 90 plus or a 90 plus plus node, they will have your back on that one. They will be able to take those guys out, and that is especially valuable in more limited accounts where you can't afford to go for like NP2, 3, 4, or 5, right? Ilya just has really solid damage from the get-go. It's not going to be any NP5 crazy damage, but for an NP1 servant, she can do some good damage. She can put it out there. So this is not a bad one because you have the opportunity to get the best servant in the game in Castoria. You have the opportunity to open up the door a little bit for quick farming and Scotty, and technically buster farming with Merlin, I guess later on in the future if you need more kind of not the optimal setups, ill optimal setups, but hey, you could use him as like a substitute for, well, not really an Oberon, but you know what I mean? Like you could throw him in there. You could use him with Ace, I suppose. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I think Ace is so crazy, that you don't have your own Oberon, you don't have your own Koya and Sky. She could still work. So Merlin still finds a way in there. And then you just have other solid servants in Miss Crane and Ilya and Izumo over here. So I think this is very high value. Then there's the other one over here. This one kind of did me a little bit wrong over on the JP side of things because I went on this one to try to get Koya and Skaya, and it's a 1 in 5 chance. And unfortunately, as much as I really like Cleopatra and I really like Huyon, this is kind of a trap because you basically have a 20% chance to walk away with Koya and Skaya and an 80% chance to get a servant you're probably not going to use. I mean, unless you're a huge Danganronpa fan and going to use Cleopatra, unless you're me exactly and you really like Huyon, or you're just a fan of like Kentucky and all that lore, you're not going to use Shuten. And then unless you really like Apocrypha, you're probably not going to be using Semiramis. I mean, these are not bad servants, I would say, especially people like Semiramis having the buff removal resistance on her NP. That is kind of valuable, but you're really just probably not going to find places to use them unless you're going to go out of your way to do so. So it kind of is a trap to look for Koya and Skaya. If you're missing out on Castoria and Koyan and you're debating on which one of these you want to go for, I think the Castoria one is definitely higher value, but I can't deny that this banner having Koya and Skaya on it is not high value. But I would advise you just try to pull for her right now when she's on raid up and save yourself the heartache on going on this banner. Then we move over to the AoE Berserkers. Now, I'm not just saying this is good because Morgan is on it, but these are all some of the better loopers in the game. Arjuna Alter is still arguably the go-to buster AoE farmer just because he does big free damage on anybody. I mean, the only time he really loses out is if you don't have Oberon because you can't, get him to full NP because he only has a 30% battery. But if you're going to be trying to do the most optimal buster, setup, you're probably going to also try to pull for Oberon as well. And I believe he also gets a rate up during the summer of this year. So you could always just go on this one preemptively to try to get Arjuna Alter. But if you whiff on him, you could get Summer Ibuki, who's the best AoE arts looper right now in the game. You could get Rikyu, who is probably not the best AoE quick looper in the game, but she's definitely up there. Her looping isn't as good as some other servants, but it's really hard to argue with a good power mod and having, just really good damage being a berserker. Raiko becomes a very strong AoE berserker for Buster when she gets her battery during Anniversary. Morgan, I already have like a billion videos talking about Morgan, you know how good she is. And even Summer Masashi over here, even though she doesn't have a battery, don't let people tell you that she can't do looping because her natural NP refund is very strong. Even if you're going into like off, nodes where it's like 2 enemies, 3 enemies, 1 enemy, something along those lines, you can still make do with her if you just plug suit in somebody like a Nero Bride or an Oberon or something along those lines. She can still get the work done, and she does get a buff on her NP that gives her power mod against sabers, and that kind of also just hard invalidates all of your AoE archers. So she's also really strong if you want to view her as a consolation prize. Now, the extra class ones, these are all really weird to look at because most of these servants are very strong. It's hard for me to say like whether or not you should or should not go on some of these because it kind of depends on what your box needs, and there are very popular servants on these banners. But some highlights are Jalter, Tyra and Melt over here on this first one. Melt especially getting another buff in about what, like 2 years from now, she'll be getting a buff that makes her even better than she already is. Like Melt is already a very strong servant in her own right, and then for whatever reason they saw the need to make her even better. So you are going to be walking away with a very, very strong single target extra class servant for whatever reason. You're just going to be getting one of them, and then, even if you don't pull them, Yang is also very solid as well, especially if you have Honey Lake. If you look at the support ones, there are some very good cheese servants on here, especially Bazette over here. Bazette has allowed some very goofy things to happen, pretty much trivializing the Herc advanced quest, which is kind of annoying to clear on the JP side of things. She can also technically do farming through countering if that is something you're looking into. And if you don't have any of the other supports and you just want to do that, that is perfectly fine. Van Gogh is an insanely strong support, especially for other foreigners. Picking her up is a huge boon to your account. And if you already have Castoria, picking up Proto Avalon over here or Proto Merlin is not a bad pickup, effectively being the arts version of Merlin. So those, I think, are very strong pickups for this category as well. But I think the ones that people are going to be looking at is going to be the quick offensive AoE one and the Buster AoE one over here, because these feature Oberon and Ruler Scotty respectively. Now, I think if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck on your GSSR, you can maybe forgo doing these for one of the other ones that we talked about and try to go for their solo raid ups. But if you know that you're not going to have any Saint Quartz when Oberon comes back around during summer, because you're going to go balls deep on the Castoria banner or the Melusine banner or whatever banner is going to be summoning on right around those times, then maybe it is wise to go for the GSSR to see if you luck out and get them now, and then you could save more Saint Quartz for going for like your wifey servants and all that good stuff. But I will say this Oberon one is pretty dang good. This is a very, very solid banner in its own right. Okita Altar, I think, is drastically underrated for how good she is as a Buster AoE looper. Not the best, not that she's crazy or anything, but I have been using her and I do enjoy her. I think she does some pretty nice work. BB Summer is just always kind of getting better. Like, it's a BB unit. They're never not going to make sure that she's not decent. Koyan Dark, as much as people will meme on her for being worse Kukulkan, I have found a use case for her. She is effectively my support for Ace the Savior, and she does one thing that Koyanskaya cannot. She can give somebody the double NP overcharge, which is an absolute killer in teams that are featuring Ace the Savior. So I will tell her, she's got that. That's an absolute banger. 30% NP to the entire party, Buster buff to the entire party, and she could potentially wave clear for me to kind of help me out a little bit. I'm sorry, I used to call her a freak in the past, but you know what? Koyan Dark, my beloved, all right? She is actually not that bad. If you get creative enough, she's not bad at all. And then obviously Oberon is the main prize over here. I think if you're looking for supports to go for, as much as I love Quick, and I would tell you to go for Ruler Scotty because she is, oh my goodness, so precious, I would probably say that going for either the Castoria one or the Oberon one is probably your best bet, as the Oberon one just has some really strong DPSs on here that you will get some use out of. Whereas going on the Castoria one, if you're really worried about getting like Izumo or Ilia, or maybe you already have Castor Scotty or Merlin, maybe this one has less value for you, and then you could opt to go for the Oberon one, as there are some double Oberon setups. I mean, Ace the Savior, I know I've been yapping about her a lot, but I've just been using her a lot lately, but she has double Oberon setups, right? Like, there are servants that benefit from just having two Oberons around to give them that 70% battery and to just really overclock their NP damage. So I do think this one is very high value. I think the Castoria one is rivaling it, but I can't argue, like, I can't lie and say that, like, potentially getting someone like BB Summer who can enable a lot of setups on her own, getting Koyan Dark who can double as a DPS and a support, and then getting the god of damage himself, Oberon, over here, it's kind of a hard, thing to pass up. Now, that's not to say that some of these other banners are bad. I'm not saying that the arts one is bad, or I'm not saying that this one is a bad, well, okay, this one's actually not all that great, but I'm not saying that any of these other banners are bad. I mean, there were a couple of takes for this video that I did where I went through all of these individually, because truth be told, a lot of these just have a good smattering of servants. The fact that they're split into like single target sabers, AoE archers, means that if you're going in for someone that does a specific role, you're going to walk away with them. Even though I don't think, like, say, these banners are like the most high value, if you need a single target assassin, you're going to get one who's pretty good and can get the job done. It's just, Unfortunately, these GSSRs, when they say like, "Oh, you're a Buster AOE servant," it's like, yeah, Oberon, by definition, is a Buster AOE servant, but we know that that's not what he's being used for, right? Or like Goyenskaya assassin AOE. It's like, okay, yeah, who's really using Goyenskaya as an AOE assassin? Come on, man, come on. The only person that might actually get that use is Scotty. You might be actually using her as your quick looper if you don't have anybody else, but those are the banners that I think are the best value, and those are some highlighted servants that I wanted to go over for the GSSR. Go ahead in the comment section down below and let me know which banner you are personally going to be pulling on. I think for me, I'm still a little undecided. I was planning on doing this one, but then I pulled Ruler Moriarty on my GSSR, and I also pulled Archer Moriarty on the Destiny Order Summon or something. So that kind of shattered my plans. Now there's a lot of GSSRs that I'm looking at and just wondering where I'm going to pull. So I will be doing that live whenever this drops over here on the NA side of things. But let me know who you're going to be pulling for in the comment section down below. And with all that being said, you guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace, late guys.